My wife wanted a 90-day separation. I agreed and started planning my future. When she found my list of women, she felt cheated. My name is Dane Reynolds. I'm 44 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I owned Reynolds Commercial Electrical, the largest commercial electrical contracting company in the greater Phoenix area. Started it from nothing 12 years ago with a beat-up truck, a toolbox, and more determination and sense. Now we were pulling in $7 million a year, handling contracts for shopping centers, office buildings, even a new hospital complex downtown. I married Danielle Hammond 20 years ago when I was 24 and she was 20. She was studying accounting at Arizona State. I was working for someone else's electrical company, dreaming about the day I'd have my own. We were young, broke, and stupid in love. She believed in me when nobody else did. Stuck with me through the lean years, the failed business loan applications, the weeks when we lived on ramen and hope. We had 2 kids. Tyler turned 17 last month, a smart kid who wanted to study engineering at UCLA. Madison was 15, all attitude and ambition, talking about becoming a lawyer. Good kids. Great kids, actually. The kind that made you believe you'd done something right in this world. Danielle had gone back to work part-time about 5 years ago, doing bookkeeping for a few small businesses out of her home office. Said she needed something for herself, something beyond being Mrs. Reynolds and the kids' mom. I got it. Encouraged it, even. Thought it was healthy for her to have her own thing going. What I didn't know was that finding herself had become code for something else entirely. It started small. She joined yoga class. Fine. Then it was girls' nights out with Brianna Morgan, her twice-divorced friend who seemed to view marriage like a rental car, something you returned when you got bored with it. Still fine. I trusted my wife. 20 years of marriage had to count for something. Then came the complaints. Our life was too predictable, too comfortable, too safe. She felt like she was living in a routine that someone else had written for her. Dane, when's the last time we did something spontaneous? She asked one night in February, standing in our kitchen with her arms crossed. When's the last time you surprised me? I looked up from the contract I'd been reviewing. I bought you those earrings you wanted for Valentine's Day. She shook her head. That's not what I mean. Everything is just so planned, so expected. Don't you ever feel like there should be more to life than this? More than what? I spread my arms. We have a beautiful home, healthy kids, financial security. I built this for us, Danny. This is the more we always dreamed about. But that wasn't the answer she wanted. I could see it in her eyes, that distant look, like she was already somewhere else in her mind. The real conversation came on a Tuesday night in late March. I remember because I just landed a $1.2 million contract for a new tech campus, and I come home ready to celebrate. Instead, I found Danielle sitting at the dining room table, hands folded, that look on her face that meant we were about to have a serious talk. I need space, she said before I could even set my briefcase down. I stood there, keys still in my hand. Space? What kind of space? I need time to figure out who I am outside of being your wife and their mother. Her voice was calm, rehearsed, like she practiced this speech. I want a 90-day separation. I'll move in with my parents. We can tell the kids it's temporary, that we're just taking a break to work on ourselves. My first instinct was to fight it, to ask what the hell she was talking about, to remind her of everything we'd built together. But something in her expression stopped me. This wasn't a request. This was a notification. If that's what you need, I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly steady, then I won't stop you. She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Just like that, you're not going to fight for us. I set my keys down slowly, meeting her eyes. You just told me our marriage feels like a prison, Danny. If my love is a cage to you, then what exactly am I supposed to be fighting for? The next morning, I did what I always did when faced with a problem. I made a plan. While Danielle was upstairs packing her things, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and started mapping out everything that needed to happen. If we were doing this separation, we were going to do it right. No half measures. No messy emotional decisions that would bite us later. First came finances. We had a joint account with about $60,000 in it. Our individual accounts held more, mine significantly, so since the business income flowed through my personal account first. I calculated what she'd need for 3 months, added a buffer, and made a note to transfer $40,000 to her account. Fair was fair. Then the bills. Mortgage, utilities, car payments, insurance. I listed everything we shared and started dividing responsibilities. She kept our family finances organized for years, but I wondered if she actually understood what it took to keep everything running. Guess we'd find out. The house was in my name only. I bought it 6 years ago, right before a major expansion of the business. My accountant had advised keeping it separate for liability reasons. At the time, Danielle had agreed it made sense. Now I was grateful for that decision. Then came the kids, Tyler and Madison. This was the part that made my jaw tighten. They didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve to have their world shaken because their mother needed to find herself. I outlined a custody arrangement that would keep their lives as stable as possible. They'd stay in a house with me during the week, spend weekends with Danielle at her parents' place. Finally, I started a new page. At the top, I wrote, after, because if Danielle wanted freedom, she was going to get it. All of it. And so was I. I started listing names. Women I knew who'd shown interest over the years. I wasn't stupid. I knew when someone was flirting, even if I'd never acted on it. There was Rachel, the 28-year-old project coordinator, who always laughed a little too hard at my jokes. Jennifer from the gym, recently divorced, who'd asked me to coffee twice. Even Natalie, Danielle's cousin, who'd made a few comments at family gatherings that walked the line. I wasn't planning to call any of them. Not yet. But if Danielle could talk about needing to explore, then I could at least acknowledge that I had options too. When Danielle came downstairs an hour later, rolling a suitcase behind her, I was still at the table. I slid the notepad toward her. Since you want to separate, I figured we should plan the logistics, I said, keeping my voice level. Finances, bills, custody, all of it. She barely glanced at it. Dane, we don't have to do all that yet. It's just a separation, not a divorce. Right, I said, leaning back in my chair. But we still have to live apart. That means we need to divide things accordingly. She waved a hand dismissively. You're overthinking it. This is just for me to get some space. That's all. I nodded slowly. Space. And I assume you'll be dating during the separation. She hesitated, then shrugged. If I meet someone, I don't see why not. Good, I said, folding my arms. Because I'll be doing the same. She blinked, her coffee cup stopping halfway to her lips. Wait, what? I kept my voice steady, watching her face. Freedom isn't just yours, Danny. I get it too. 3 days after Danielle moved out, she showed up at the house unannounced. I was in the garage working on some quotes when I heard her car pull into the driveway. Tyler and Madison were at school, which meant whatever this was, she timed it deliberately. She walked into the garage, holding something in her hand. My notepad, the one I'd left on the kitchen counter. Are you serious, Dane? Her voice was shaking, but not with sadness. With anger. Pure, unfiltered rage. I set down my drill and turned to face her. About what? She shook the notepad at me. This. You already have a list. You couldn't even wait until we separated before planning who you're going to screw next. I wiped my hands on a rag, keeping my expression neutral. You told me you wanted to date other people, Danny. You expected me to sit around and wait. Rachel, she snapped, flipping through the pages. Your secretary? She's what, 12 years younger than you? And Jennifer from a gym? Really? I shrugged. They're both adults. Both single. Both interested. Her face went red. And Natalie? My cousin Natalie? You put my own family on your list. She's been flirting with me for years, I said calmly. You know it. I know it. Hell, your whole family knows it. Danielle's hands were shaking now. You think I'm just going to sit here and watch you date people I know? People from my life. I took a step closer, my voice dropping low. Now you know how I feel. She blinked, thrown off. What? You wanted freedom, I said, my tone deliberate and controlled. You wanted to explore, to see what else is out there. But you expected me to stay right here, loyal, waiting like some pathetic fool for you to decide if I'm worth keeping. That's not happening, Danny. This is different, she protested, but her voice had lost some of its edge. How? I challenged. How is it different? Because you're a woman? Because you're the one who asked for the separation? You wanted this door open. Well, it swings both ways. She opened her mouth, then closed it, clearly searching for an argument that would stick. I didn't think you'd actually move on this fast. And I didn't think my wife of 20 years would suddenly decide she needed freedom from our marriage. I countered. Guess we're both full of surprises. I could see the wheels turning in her head. This wasn't the script she'd imagined. In her version, I was supposed to be devastated, maybe angry, definitely not calm and planning my own future. You're doing this to hurt me, she finally said. I shook my head slowly. No, Danny. I'm doing this because I'm not going to be your backup plan. You wanted to see if there's something better out there? Fine. But don't expect me to guarantee you a soft place to land if you don't find it. She stood there for a long moment, the notepad still clutched in her hand. Finally, she threw at my chest. It bounced off and landed on the concrete floor. You know what? She said, her voice brittle. Maybe I was right. Maybe we do need this separation. Because the man I married would have fought for our marriage. I picked up the notepad and set it on my workbench. The man you married did fight for this marriage. For 20 years. Every day. Every late night. Every sacrifice. But you don't fight for someone who's already walking away, Danielle. You just let them go. She turned and walked toward her car. But before she got in, she looked back at me. This isn't over, Dane. Yeah, I said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. A week into the separation, something started nagging at me. Call it instinct, call it paranoia. But 20 years of running a business had taught me to trust my gut when numbers didn't feel right. I pulled up our bank statements on my laptop that evening after the kids had gone to bed. Our joint account showed the usual transactions. Groceries, gas, utilities. Nothing unusual. But then I checked the credit card statement, the one we use for larger purchases. There was a charge from 3 months ago. A hotel in Scottsdale. The Phoenician. One night. $467. I stared at the screen. We hadn't gone to any hotel in Scottsdale. I'd been in Tucson that weekend for a commercial job bid. Danielle had said she was staying home with the kids. My jaw tightened as I scrolled further. 2 weeks before that, another hotel charge. This one in Sedona. 2 nights. $812. I'd been in Las Vegas for a trade conference. She'd said she was taking the kids to her parents' place. But the kids had been at a basketball tournament that weekend. I remembered because Tyler had sent me photos. I opened another window and logged into our savings account. The balance was lower than I remembered. A lot lower. I pulled up the transaction history and felt my blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, there had been a series of transfers. Small at first. 2,000 here, 3,000 there. Then bigger. 10,000. 15,000. All going in an account I didn't recognize. I grabbed my phone and called my accountant, Jerry, even though it was past 9 at night. He answered on the 3rd ring. Jerry, I need you to trace some transactions for me, I said, reading off the account numbers. He was quiet for a moment. Dang, that's going to take some time. Can this wait until morning? No, I said flatly. It can't. 2 hours later, Jerry called me back. The account belongs to Brianna Morgan. You know her. Brianna, Danielle's twice-divorced friend. The one who'd been pushing this whole separation idea. Yeah, I said, my voice tight. I know her. There's more, Jerry continued. The transfers total about $162,000 over the past 8 months. I sat down hard in my office chair. $162,000. Gone. Moved to Brianna's account without my knowledge, without my signature. Dane. Jerry's voice came through the phone. You still there? Yeah, I managed. Can you freeze our joint accounts? All of them. Right now. That'll take until morning, but I can start the paperwork. Do it, I said. And Jerry? I'm going to need a good divorce attorney. The best you know. After I hung up, I sat there in the dark, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the room. Danielle hadn't just wanted freedom. She'd been planning this. For months. Maybe longer. And she'd stolen over $160,000 to fund whatever life she'd been building behind my back. I opened a new browser tab and started searching for private investigators in Phoenix. If she'd been hiding money, what else had she been hiding? I hired Derek Foster, the best private investigator in Phoenix. Cost me $5,000 up front, but if Danielle had been hiding $162,000, I needed to know what else she'd been hiding. Derek called me 4 days later. Mr. Reynolds, we need to meet. In person. We met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale, far from anyone who might know me. Derek slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were photos. Lots of them. Danielle and a man I didn't recognize. Outside a restaurant. Getting into his car. Walking into a hotel. The timestamps went back 7 months. His name is Aaron Carlson, Derek said, tapping one of the photos. 37 years old. He's a business consultant. Works with small companies, helps them optimize operations, that kind of thing. I stared at the photo. He was younger than me. Fit. Wearing an expensive suit. How long? Based on what I could track. At least 8 months. Maybe longer. Derek pulled out another document. Here's where it gets interesting. Aaron Carlson also does consulting work for Henderson Construction. My head snapped up. Henderson Construction was my biggest competitor in the Phoenix area. We've been underbidding each other for contract for years. You're telling me my wife's boyfriend works for my competition? Derek nodded. And according to my source, Henderson has been landing contracts they shouldn't have known about. Bids that came in just under yours. Specifications they shouldn't have had access to. The pieces clicked into place. All those nights Danielle had sat with me while I worked on proposals. All those conversations about upcoming jobs, about bidding strategies, about which projects I was most excited about. I thought she was just being supportive, interested in my work. She'd been feeding information to her lover, who'd been passing it to my competitor. There's one more thing, Derek said quietly. He pulled out another photo. This one showed Danielle from the side, wearing a loose dress, her hand resting on what looked like a small bump. When was this taken? I asked, my voice tight. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Reynolds. I can't be certain from a photograph, but based on her appearance and the clothes she's been wearing in recent surveillance, I believe your wife may be pregnant. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. How far along? If I had to guess, for maybe 5 months. But that's just an estimate. I did the math in my head. 4 to 5 months ago, Danielle and I had barely been intimate. Maybe once, possibly twice. We'd both been busy, stressed. I thought it was just a rough patch. But 4 to 5 months ago, based on Derek's timeline, she'd been deep into her affair with Aaron. I closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. I need you to find out everything about Aaron Carlson. Everything. Where he works, where he lives, his financial situation. And I need to know if he's married, if he has kids, if there's anyone in his life who should know what he's been doing. Already on it, Derek said. I'll have a full report by end of week. After Derek left, I sat in my truck in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, but one kept pushing to the front. If Danielle was pregnant with Aaron's child, that meant she'd planned this separation not to find herself, but to hide the pregnancy from me, to give birth away from my house, away from questions, away from the truth. And then what? Come back and pretend everything was fine? Tell me she'd had a miscarriage during the separation? Or just disappear entirely with Aaron and start a new life? I pulled out my phone and called my attorney, Robert Chandler, the best divorce lawyer in Phoenix that Jerry had recommended. Robert, it's Dane Reynolds. We need to accelerate everything. File the papers. I want her served immediately. Are you sure? Robert asked. Once we file, there's no going back. I'm sure, I said. And Robert, I'm going to need to file for full custody of Tyler and Madison. Whatever it takes. That evening, I did something I've been avoiding. I ordered DNA test kits online. 2 of them. One for Tyler, one for Madison. They'd arrive in 2 days. 20 years of marriage. And I was about to find out if my own children were actually mine. The thought made me sick. But I had to know. Had to be sure. Because if Danielle had been lying about this pregnancy, had been lying about Aaron, had been lying about the money, then what else had she been lying about? 2 days after I had ordered the DNA kits, my father-in-law showed up at my office. Richard Hammond, 68 years old, retired real estate developer, and the man who'd always treated me like I wasn't quite good enough for his daughter. My secretary, Rachel, buzzed me. Mr. Reynolds, there's a Richard Hammond here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. Send him in, I said, closing my laptop. Richard walked in wearing a $1,000 suit and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't wait for me to offer him a seat, just sat down across from my desk and got straight to business. Dane, we need to talk about this situation with Danielle. I leaned back in my chair. What situation would that be, Richard? Don't play games, he said, his voice sharp. She told me about the separation, about you planning to date other women, about you freezing her out financially. I gave her $40,000, I pointed out. Half of our joint account. That's hardly freezing her out. Richard waved that away like it was nothing. That's not what I'm here to discuss. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Set on my desk. I didn't touch it. What's that? $250,000, Richard said. A check. Made out to you. I stared at the envelope, then at him. For what? For walking away quietly, Richard said. No public fighting. No dragging Danielle through a messy divorce. You take the money, you agree to a clean split, and we all move on with our lives. I picked up the envelope, opened it, and looked at the check. Sure enough, $250,000. Richard Hammond's signature at the bottom. You're offering me $250,000 to divorce your daughter quietly, I said slowly. To make this easy for everyone, Richard corrected. Danielle made a mistake. She knows that now. But dragging this out, making it ugly, that doesn't help anyone, especially not Tyler and Madison. I set the check down on my desk. Does Danielle know you're here? No, Richard admitted. And she doesn't need to. This is between you and me. Man to man. I leaned forward, folding my hands on my desk. Richard, let me ask you something. Why are you really here? Because I don't buy this making it easy story. You've never cared about making my life easy before. Something flickered in his eyes. What's that supposed to mean? It means your daughter is having an affair with a man who works for my competitor. It means she's been stealing money from our accounts and hiding it. It means she's pregnant with another man's child. And now you're here, trying to pay me off. I tilted my head. So I'll ask again. Why are you really here? Richard's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I stood up, walking around my desk. See, I've been doing some digging, Richard. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe you know more about Danielle's activities than you're letting on. Maybe you even encourage them. That's absurd, Richard said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. Is it? I picked up the check and held it up. Because this feels less like a generous offer and more like hush money. Like you're trying to make sure I don't start asking too many questions about how long this has been going on, or who else might have known about it. Richard stood up, his face red. You're making wild accusations, Dane. Then prove me wrong, I said, tearing the check in half. Tell me you had nothing to do with your daughter's affair. Tell me you didn't know she was stealing money. Tell me you weren't helping her hide a pregnancy. He said nothing, just stared at the torn check in my hands. That's what I thought. I said quietly, you can show yourself out, Richard, and you can tell Danielle that I'll see her in court. After he left, I sat back down at my desk and pulled out my phone. I took a photo of the torn check and sent it to my attorney with a message. Father-in-law, just try to bribe me. Document everything. Then I opened my drawer and pulled out the DNA test kits that had arrived that morning. Tonight, after dinner, I'd talk to Tyler and Madison. This was going to hurt them, but they deserve the truth. Whatever that truth turned out to be. Derek Foster called me the next morning with information that made everything click into place. I found the connection between Richard Hammond and Aaron Carlson, he said without preamble. And it goes deeper than I thought. I was in my truck, heading to a job site, but I pulled over immediately. I'm listening. Richard Hammond owns a property management company, Hammond Real Estate Holdings. About 2 years ago, he brought in a consultant to help streamline operations. That consultant was Aaron Carlson. So they've known each other for 2 years, I said, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. It gets better, Derek continued. During that consultation period, Richard introduced Aaron to Danielle, told her Aaron could help with her bookkeeping business, give her advice on expanding. They started meeting regularly for business consultations. I felt my jaw clench. Richard set them up. That's my assessment. And here's where it gets really interesting. Remember Brianna Morgan, the friend who's been pushing Danielle toward divorce. The one whose account has my money in it, I said coldly. Right. Well, Brianna Morgan has been in a relationship with Richard Hammond for the past 3 years. She's his mistress. He pays for her apartment, her car, gives her a monthly allowance of about $5,000. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle I should have seen months ago. Richard was having an affair with Brianna. He set up Danielle with Aaron. Brianna pushed Danielle to ask for a separation. And during that separation, Danielle planned to give birth to Aaron's child away from you. Then either come back claiming it was yours or disappear with Aaron entirely, Derek finished. Either way, Richard gets what he wants. Which is what? I asked, though I was starting to understand. You out of the picture, Derek said simply. Think about it. Richard never approved of you. Blue-collar guy, worked with your hands, not from the right social circle. But he couldn't just tell Danielle to divorce you without a good reason. So he created one, set her up with Aaron, let nature take its course, then had Brianna convince her she deserved better. I sat in my truck, engine idling, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. My father-in-law had orchestrated the destruction of my marriage, had introduced my wife to her lover, had paid his own mistress to convince my wife to leave me. There's one more thing, Derek said quietly. I traced the money Danielle transferred to Brianna's account. Most of it has been moved again, to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Joint account, registered to Richard Hammond and Brianna Morgan. He's been stealing from me through Danielle. I said, the realization hitting me like a freight train. Using her to siphon money, then hiding it offshore. That's what it looks like. And I'm guessing he planned to use that money to fund Danielle and Aaron's new life together. Make sure his daughter was taken care of after you were out of the picture. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Can you prove all of this? I've got bank records, property documents, emails between Richard and Brianna discussing you and Danielle. I've got timestamps showing when Aaron and Danielle started meeting. I've got everything you need for a lawsuit and a criminal complaint. Send it all to my attorney, I said. Every single piece of evidence you have. Already done, Derek replied. And Dane, I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy to hear. After I hung up, I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, watching traffic pass by, thinking about how blind I'd been. I trusted my wife, trusted my father-in-law, even though we'd never been close. Assumed that family meant something. But Richard had never seen me as family. He'd seen me as an obstacle. And he'd spent 2 years systematically removing me from his daughter's life. My phone buzzed. A text from my attorney, Robert Chandler. Got the files from Foster. We need to meet. This changes everything. I texted back, tomorrow morning. And Robert, I want them all. Divorce from Danielle. Criminal charges against Richard for fraud and embezzlement. Civil suit for the stolen money. All of it. His response came back immediately. Consider it done. I started my truck and pulled back onto the road. There was a family dinner tonight at Richard and Patricia's house. Danielle would be there. Brianna would probably be there too, playing the supportive friend. I hadn't planned on going, but now I wouldn't miss it for the world. Because they wanted to play games, wanted to manipulate and scheme and destroy. Fine, but they were about to learn that I wasn't the kind of man who went down without a fight. And when I fought to win. I showed up at Richard and Patricia's house that evening at exactly 7 o'clock. My mother-in-law answered the door, surprise evident on her face. Dane, I didn't know you were coming, Patricia said, stepping aside to let me in. Last-minute decision, I said, giving her a smile. Thought it would be good to see everyone. The dining room was full. Richard sat at the head of the table. Danielle was there, looking uncomfortable. Brianna sat next to her, playing the supportive friend. Natalie, Danielle's cousin, was across from them. Tyler and Madison were at the far end, both looking up in surprise when I walked in. Dad, Tyler said, what are you doing here? Your grandfather invited me to family dinner, I said, even though that was a lie. Couldn't miss it. Richard's face had gone pale. Dane, I don't think. Oh, don't worry, Richard. I interrupted, taking a seat directly across from him. I'm not going to cause a scene. I just wanted to have dinner with my family. That's still allowed, isn't it? Patricia brought out the food, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding it. We served ourselves in uncomfortable silence. Tyler and Madison kept glancing at me, questions in their eyes. Finally, Danielle spoke up. Dane, we should talk. About everything. Sure, I said pleasantly. What do you want to talk about? The separation? Your relationship with Aaron? Or maybe the $162,000 you stole from our accounts? Patricia dropped her serving spoon. The clatter echoed in the suddenly silent room. What are you talking about? Danielle said, her voice shaking. I pulled out my phone and set on the table. I'm talking about the money you transferred to Brianna's account over the past 8 months. The money that's now sitting in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Registered to Richard and Brianna. Patricia turned to her husband. Richard? What is he talking about? Richard's face had gone from pale to red. Dane, you have no idea. No idea about what? I interrupted. About how you introduced my wife to her lover 2 years ago. About how you've been having an affair with Brianna for 3 years. About how you orchestrated this whole separation so you could get me out of the picture. Natalie gasped. Uncle Richard, is that true? It's not what you think, Richard stammered. I turned to Danielle. And you're pregnant, aren't you? About 5 months along. Aaron's baby. Patricia's hand went to her mouth. Madison started crying. Tyler just stared at his mother, betrayal written all over his face. Danielle started, but no other words came. You what? I asked, my voice still calm, still controlled. You were going to give birth during the separation and pretend it never happened? Hand the baby over to Aaron? Or were you just planning to tell me it was mine? Brianna stood up. Danielle, we should go. Sit down, Brianna, I said sharply. You're not going anywhere. Not until everyone here knows exactly what you did. How you convinced my wife to destroy our marriage while you were sleeping with her father. How you helped steal my money so you and Richard could run off together. Patricia turned to her husband, her voice breaking. Richard, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this to our daughter. To Dane. To this family. Richard said nothing. Just sat there, his hands gripping the edge of the table. I stood up, looking down at all of them. I filed for divorce this morning. Full custody of Tyler and Madison. I also filed criminal charges against Richard for embezzlement and fraud. And I'm filing a civil suit to recover every dollar that was stolen, plus damages. I turned to Danielle. You want a freedom? Congratulations. You're about to have more freedom than you ever imagined. Freedom from our marriage. Freedom from our home. And if the DNA tests I'm running on our kids come back the way I think they will, freedom from them too. DNA tests. Danielle whispered. Did you really think I wouldn't check? I asked. After everything else you've lied about. I walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Brianna, you should know that Aaron Carlson is also sleeping with his business partner's wife. Has been for about 6 months. So congratulations, Danielle. Your soulmate is just as faithful as you are. I walked out into the cool Phoenix night, leaving behind the wreckage of lies and betrayal. Behind me, I could hear Patricia screaming at Richard, could hear Danielle sobbing, could hear the complete collapse of the Hammond family. My phone rang as I reached my truck. Tyler. Dad, he said, his voice thick with tears. Is it true? All of it? Yes, son, I said quietly. I'm sorry you had to find out like that. Are we really not yours? He asked, and the pain in his voice nearly broke me. I don't know yet, I admitted. But Tyler, listen to me. No matter what those tests say, you and Madison are my kids. Do you understand? You're mine. Nothing changes that. He was quiet for a moment. Can we come stay with you tonight? I don't want to be here. I'm on my way, I said. Pack your things. Both of you. The DNA results arrived 3 days after the family dinner. I sat in my home office, staring at the envelope, knowing that whatever was inside would change everything. Tyler and Madison were in their rooms. They'd been quiet since leaving their grandmother's house, processing everything they'd learned. I tried to give them space, but I could see the questions in their eyes every time they looked at me. I opened the first envelope. Tyler's results. Probability of paternity, 99.98%. My son. My boy. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me like a wave. Whatever else Danielle had done, Tyler was mine. I opened the second envelope with shaking hands. Madison's results. Probability of paternity, 0%. The paper slipped from my fingers and landed on my desk. I stared at it, reading the words over and over, hoping they'd somehow change. Madison wasn't mine. The daughter I'd raised for 15 years. The girl who called me daddy, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who'd fallen asleep on my shoulder during long car rides. She wasn't biologically mine. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Madison appeared in my doorway, her eyes red from crying. Dad, can we talk? I quickly gathered the papers, but she'd already seen them. Her face went pale. Those are the DNA tests, aren't they? She asked quietly. There was no point in lying. Yes, sweetheart, they are. She walked into my office and sat down across from me. Am I yours? I looked at my daughter, this brave, brilliant 15-year-old who'd been caught in the middle of her mother's lies. And I knew exactly what I needed to say. Yes, I said firmly. You are mine. You've always been mine. You always will be. But the test. The test tells me about genetics. I interrupted. It doesn't tell me about the girl I've raised. It doesn't tell me about the first time you called me daddy, or the way you used to make me breakfast in bed on Father's Day, or how you'd come to me when you had nightmares. Biology doesn't make you my daughter, Madison. Love does. And I love you more than anything in this world. Tears streamed down her face. Does Tyler know? Not yet, I admitted. But it doesn't matter. You're brother and sister. You're my kids. Nothing changes that. She stood up and walked around the desk, throwing her arms around me. I held her tight. This girl who was mine in every way that mattered. I don't want to see her, Madison said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Mom, I don't want to see her ever again. You don't have to, I promised. Not until you're ready. If you're ever ready. That evening, I called both kids into the living room. Tyler sat on the couch, looking wary. Madison sat next to him. I got the DNA results back, I said, deciding to be direct. Tyler, you're mine biologically. Madison, you're not. Madison grabbed her brother's hand. Tyler stared at me, processing. So Madison and I are only half-siblings? He asked. You're full siblings in every way that counts, I said. You grew up together. You're family. That doesn't change. Tyler looked at his sister. You're still my annoying little sister. And you're still my idiot big brother. Madison shot back, a small smile breaking through her tears. And you're both still my kids, I added. Nothing about that changes. Not now, not ever. Tyler stood up and walked over to me. What about Mom? What's going to happen to her? She's going to face the consequences of what she did, I said honestly. The divorce will go through. She'll likely lose custody. Your grandfather is facing criminal charges. It's going to get messy. Good, Madison said bitterly. Hey, I said gently. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But she's still your mother. Someday, when you're ready, you might want a relationship with her. And that's okay too. I won't, Madison said firmly. I didn't argue. She was 15. She had time to figure out how she felt. What about Aunt Natalie? Tyler asked suddenly. I blinked. What about her? She's been texting me, he said, asking how we're doing. She said she wants to take us out for dinner, just to check in. Natalie, Danielle's cousin, the one I put on that list weeks ago, half as a statement, half as truth. The one who'd always been a little too friendly, a little too interested. If you want to see her, that's fine, I said carefully. She said she wants to see you too, Tyler added, a knowing look in his eyes. Said she has something important to talk to you about. 8 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, watching the sun rise over the Phoenix skyline. The house was smaller than the one I'd sold, but it was mine, clean, free of memories that hurt. Tyler was upstairs, getting ready for his senior year. He decided on Arizona State instead of UCLA, wanted to stay close. Madison was still asleep, typical for a Saturday morning. The divorce had been finalized 4 months ago. Danielle had fought it first, but once the evidence came out, once her lawyers saw what she was up against, she'd settled. I got full custody. She got supervised visitation twice a month, which the kids rarely took her up on. Richard Hammond was awaiting trial for fraud and embezzlement. The offshore account had been frozen, the money recovered. He'd aged 10 years and 8 months, his empire crumbling around him. Patricia had filed for divorce, taking half of what was left. Brianna Morgan had disappeared. Last I heard, she'd moved to California, living off whatever money she'd managed to hide before the accounts were frozen. Aaron Carlson had lost his job with Henderson Construction after the affair became public. His wife had left him. He tried to contest paternity of Danielle's baby, but the DNA test proved he was the father. He was now paying child support for a kid he'd never wanted. Danielle had given birth to a boy 4 months ago. She named him Nathan. I'd never seen him, had no interest in seeing him. He wasn't my responsibility, wasn't my problem. My phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. Coffee this morning? My place. I smiled. Natalie and I had started seeing each other 3 months ago. Slowly, carefully, both of us aware of how complicated the situation was. She was 36, divorced, no kids. She worked as a graphic designer, had her own place in Tempe. The family had been divided over it. Some thought it was too soon, too weird. Others, like Patricia, had actually been supportive. If anyone deserves happiness after what my daughter did, it's you, she told me. Tyler and Madison liked her. That was what mattered most. I texted back, see you in an hour. As I poured my coffee, I thought about everything that had happened. A year ago, I'd been a man who thought he had it all figured out. A successful business, a stable marriage, 2 great kids. Now I was divorced, my father-in-law was facing prison, and one of my kids wasn't biologically mine. But somehow, I was happier than I'd been in years. Because I'd learned something through all of this. I'd learned that you can't build a life with someone who doesn't want to be there. You can't force loyalty, can't manufacture respect, and you definitely can't make someone appreciate what they have until it's gone. Danielle had wanted freedom. She'd gotten it, and in the process, she'd lost everything that actually mattered. Her kids barely spoke to her. Her father was going to prison. Her lover wanted nothing to do with her. And she was raising a baby alone, living in a small apartment paid for by court-ordered support from me. As for me, I had my kids. I had my business, stronger than ever. I had a woman who chose to be with me, not because she was trapped, but because she wanted to be. And I had myself. The man who'd refused to beg, refused to play victim, refused to let someone else's betrayal define who I was. Tyler came downstairs, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. You heading to Natalie's? Yeah, I said. You okay here with Madison? We're good, he said. Actually, we were thinking about going to see Mom this afternoon. She's been asking. I felt a small stab of something. Not jealousy exactly. Maybe just sadness that this was what things had become. If that's what you want, I said. It's not about wanting, Tyler said, sounding older than 17. It's about doing the right thing. She's still our mom, even if she messed up. I pulled my son into a hug. You're a better man than me, kid. Learn from the best, he said. As I drove to Natalie's place, I thought about the future, about the possibility of building something new with someone who saw me, really saw me, about watching my kids grow into good people despite everything they'd been through. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Reynolds? A woman's voice, professional. This is Amanda Reyes, Aaron Carlson's former fiancée. I need to talk to you about something important. About your ex-wife and Aaron. About what they did. Can we meet? I pulled over to the side of the road. What do you know? Everything, she said. And I think you need to hear it. Because what they did to you, they did to me too. And I think together,